Okay, for this next part of tracing our line onto our canvas panel, you're going to need your dried panel, a sheet of tracing paper. It can be the same size as your canvas panel or a little bit larger, or even like a scrap sheet of copy paper will work. You're also going to need a pencil, and what I'm going to ask you to do is to pick 2 points on a map in relation to where you're currently at. So you could be at home right now, you could be at work, you can be at school, and what I want you to do is pick 1 point and put that into, let's say, Google Maps. And then the second point can be somewhere that has meaning to you. It can be the place where you were born, the place where you met your first love. It could be the place where a loved one is right now. It could be where your cat is. So the only requirement is I want it to have personal meaning to you. What I ended up choosing, and I'll show you right now, is the place where I was born in relation to where I am right now. So I popped in those 2 coordinates on a map, and it created this path from point A to where I'm at and point B. The next step, what I want you to do, is to take that path and you're going to draw it on your tracing paper, and you're going to create just 1 line. And it's okay if it's not perfect, but I really want you to pay close attention to those little details and nuances that make up that path. If you have a tablet or a larger screen, you can most likely end up like tracing over it. That is totally fine. But I want you to go ahead and make sure you take up the majority of the space on your tracing paper. So I feel pretty happy with that line. And so depending on what path you're tracing, your line can end up being more geometric. It could be a little bit more organic, depending if it's like city, if it's more like outdoors. So everybody's going to get a different type of path. So now that I have my path all laid out in front of me, what I want to do next is use this Illustrator technique, where I'm going to flip it to the back, and I'm going to go ahead and trace that line, or actually use the graphite and rub it all the way across the back of my line. This is going to give me a simple way to transfer my line onto my canvas. The next part is you're going to take your path that you created using these 2 points of meaning, and you're going to create a design for the background of your painting. What I recommend is rotate your canvas and trace your line onto your canvas just like so. And the fact that I applied the graphite to the back of my paper is going to help me transfer that line onto the white of my canvas. And I'll zoom in a little bit so you can see it. And I'm going to rotate this, and I want to make sure that my line extends to the edge or even past the edge of my canvas, because these lines are going to create the topography of your layered self-portrait. And you can arrange these however you want. You can crop it, you can just use sections of it to create your design. And I want you to do this at least 5 times to create an intricate design for your background. Think about how you're arranging this, how you're using line to create a composition. Think of the rule of thirds. You're creating these abstracted shapes and the spaces in between those lines you create. Cross the center to emphasize a more dynamic design. And so I can just keep doing this until I get something where I feel really happy with. And so here's just a little short example of what my design looks like. One thing you can do is go back over with your pencil with light pressure and trace over all your line marks just so you know they are visible. And that is the first part of tracing and creating your background design. Now that I have my background design drawn in, the next part is to introduce our personal object. So your personal object can be something from home, something that has meaning. It could be a leaf from a tree, outside your place. It could be a plant from a garden. It could be berries off of a shrub. What I ended up choosing was this bougainvillea that is from my studio, and I wanted to use this as a symbol of a place where I go and work and that is important to me. So what I'm going to do is actually draw this on top of my background design. So there's a couple ways you can do this. You can do this freehand, and I want you to try to do this from observation. In class we ended up creating viewfinders like this that helps us orient and transfer our drawing onto canvas, and I'll show you a quick tip on how to do this really quick. So for those of you who created your viewfinder, you'll have one like this, and it's broken up into 4 quadrants. And the way I'm going to do this is simply transfer those lines and help me out is I'm going to take my ruler and I'm just going to draw some points right across the middle of my canvas. I'm going to mark each side at the center point, and you can go ahead and erase these later. They're just going to be here to help you. I'm going to go ahead and draw these lightly, and I'm using a pencil so I can erase these or paint over these later. And they stand out against my drawings because these are perfectly horizontal and vertical. So what I can do is actually take my viewfinder and place it over my object to figure out how it's going to fit in onto my canvas. And this gives you a simple grid so you can actually practice drawing from observation. So I'm going to go ahead and do that really quick so you can actually see what that looks like. I'm going to use the viewfinder from this perspective, and you'll just be able to see me transfer my organic object onto my canvas. So what I want to do is trace those lines, and I'm using heavier pressure. You can even do this on another sheet of paper and transfer your drawing over. The nice thing about using an organic object is that you do not have to be super perfect. It gives you a bit of freedom. And what I'm focusing on are the contour lines of the object, meaning the outside line, the silhouette, and those cross contour lines, those lines that make up the inside of my object. And you'll start to notice that they are going to start to add to the topographical lines of my background, meaning they're all going to become one. And you're going to differentiate between the two using color. I'm going to go ahead and draw this in. And remember, you can set up your viewfinder to help you out. I've been doing this a couple times now, so I can do this freehand. But the viewfinder is a great way to try it out And if you have students and you want to introduce them to like observational drawing, the viewfinder is a great way to use the grid method to transfer complex shapes onto their canvas. And so I can go ahead and add some more details right there. And I'm using heavy pressure because I want to delineate between the foreground and the background right now before I start painting. And there you have it. That is my background and foreground object. The next step is we are going to start to paint.